For most of the world, a birthday is a mandatory moment of joy, a social contract that demands you pause your life to be celebrated by everyone you know. But for you, the approach of that specific date on the calendar might trigger a feeling of dread, a desire to disappear, or simply a profound indifference. You might treat it like any other Tuesday, keeping your head down and your date of birth a secret from your colleagues to avoid the awkward cake ritual. If this sounds like you, society might have labeled you a Grinch or a cynic, but psychology tells a much deeper and more validating story about your mind. The decision to ignore your birthday is rarely just about hating fun. It is a complex symptom of either profound maturity or deep-seated self-protection. We are going to dismantle the psychology of the non-celebrator to understand why treating your birthday as a normal day might be your greatest strength. Number 1, we have to look at the biology of your personality, specifically regarding a trait psychologists call high cortical arousal. You might identify as an introvert, but it is critical to distinguish that introversion is not the same as shyness. It is about how you process stimulation. Introverts have a naturally high baseline of brain activity, meaning you are already mentally stimulated without needing any help from the outside world. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is looking at you. Lights are flashing, and 3 people are talking to you at once while demanding a reaction. For an extrovert, this is energizing, but for you, this pushes your brain past its optimal level of arousal and leads to rapid and total energy depletion. Because you are already running at high capacity, the spotlight of a birthday feels less like a celebration and more like a sensory assault on your system. Treating your birthday as a normal day is not an act of rejection. It is an act of biological regulation to keep your mind in a state of equilibrium. Number 2, your aversion may stem from a deeply logical psychological defense mechanism known as protective apathy or the expectation-reality gap. We are raised on a cultural script that promises birthdays will be magical days filled with unconditional love, perfect gifts, and undivided attention. However, as we transition into adulthood, reality rarely matches this childhood fantasy, leading to a stinging psychological state called the disappointment cycle. Imagine the specific sinking feeling in your stomach when you check your phone and realize a close friend forgot to text you, or the plan you made falls apart. To avoid this acute pain, your brain adopts a strategy of defensive normalcy, convincing you that the day means absolutely nothing to you at all. By setting your expectations to 0, you are engaging in a cognitive behavioral coping skill that effectively inoculates you against the pain of rejection. You are not broken for feeling this way. You are simply smart enough to protect your emotional well-being from the volatility of other people's behavior. Number 3 involves a concept that sociologist Ali Hochschild termed emotional labor, which is the effort required to manage your feelings for others. The standard birthday ritual is actually an egocentric paradox, because while it is supposed to be for you, it requires you to perform for everyone else. You are expected to display surprise when you open a gift you don't need, smile when you are tired, and express profound gratitude for unwanted attention. Imagine sitting at a dinner table while 12 people sing to you. You don't know where to look, your hands feel clammy, and you feel trapped in the moment. This performance creates cognitive dissonance, a stressful mental conflict between what you genuinely feel inside and what you are forced to show the world. When you choose to treat the day as normal, you are rejecting this performative labor and refusing to spend your energy managing the emotions of the crowd. Number 4 takes us into the deeper waters of developmental psychology, looking at how your childhood attachment style shapes your adult celebration. For those with a dismissive-avoidant attachment style, independence is equated with safety, and needing things from others is seen as a weakness. You may subconsciously view birthdays as childish or illogical because they require you to admit that you have a desire to be cared for by others. Imagine a child who learned early on that their needs would not be met. That child grows up to be an adult who proactively decides they need nothing. By treating the day as normal, you are utilizing a deactivation strategy, effectively turning off your attachment system to prove you are self-sufficient. This is often why you might be an overgiver, someone who goes all out for other people's birthdays but absolutely refuses to be celebrated yourself. It feels safer to be in the position of control as the giver than to be in the vulnerable, uncontrollable position of the receiver who might be let down. Number 5 explores the darker existential side of the coin, involving a psychological concept known as mortality salience and the terror of time. According to terror management theory, much of human behavior is motivated by an unconscious fear of death, and birthdays are the ultimate reminder of it. While culture frames the birthday as a celebration of life, your subconscious might process it as a countdown, triggering a quiet existential audit. Imagine blowing out the candles, and instead of making a wish, you are suddenly struck by the mathematical reality that another significant year is gone. This is especially common among nine-enders, people aged 29, 39, or 49, who are statistically more likely to experience a crisis of meaning on their birthday. By treating the birthday as a normal day, you are engaging in a form of denial that psychologically minimizes the passage of time to reduce your anxiety. This is not necessarily unhealthy. It is a way to maintain your focus on the present moment rather than spiraling into dread about a future you cannot control. Number 6 moves away from fear and looks at a very positive driver of this behavior, which psychologists call autonomy and internal locus of control. A distinct subset of non-celebrators score very high on traits of self-determination, meaning they derive their self-worth entirely from within themselves. You do not need the permission of a calendar date to feel special, nor do you need a specific ritual to justify buying yourself a gift or taking a break. Imagine a person who practices self-honoring behaviors all year round, taking care of their needs consistently rather than saving it up for one day. For this person, the birthday feels redundant because they do not rely on external validation or social scripts to tell them that they are valuable. If you fall into this category, your indifference is actually a massive sign of psychological maturity and a rejection of hollow social conformity. You are displaying what is known as authenticity, refusing to feign enthusiasm for a ritual that does not align with your internal values or current mood. Number 7 addresses the personality trait of conscientiousness, which involves a strong preference for order, routine, and goal-oriented behavior. For highly conscientious individuals, a birthday represents a chaotic variable that disrupts the comforting and productive flow of their daily life. You might find genuine satisfaction in a hard day's work and view a surprise party not as a gift, but as an interruption to your mental focus. Imagine being in a state of flow with your work or a personal project, only to be dragged away for a forced social interaction that breaks your concentration. The gift you want to give yourself is the maintenance of your discipline, because that is where you find your true dopamine hit and sense of purpose. Research indicates that these individuals value the stability of the routine over the novelty of the celebration, finding peace in the predictable. Number 8 looks at the impact of social anxiety disorder and the physiological panic induced by what is known as the spotlight effect. For someone with social anxiety, the birthday is perceived not as a joyous occasion, but as a legitimate threat to their social safety and comfort levels. The happy birthday song is a classic trigger for the spotlight effect, where you feel intensely scrutinized and judged by everyone in the room. Imagine the physical sensation of your heart racing and your palms sweating as you wait for the song to end, feeling like an animal trapped in a corner. Avoiding the celebration is a logical maneuver to prevent this physiological distress, a way to maintain safety in a world that feels overwhelmingly loud. This doesn't mean you don't want connection. It means you fear the performance of connection that the birthday ritual forces you to enact publicly. Number 9 brings us to the philosophical objection, often rooted in anti-consumerist values and a rejection of the commodification of affection. The modern birthday industry monetizes love, creating a gift anxiety where the value of a relationship is measured by the price tag of a present. You might reject this because you view the obligation to exchange material goods as inauthentic, wasteful, and a distraction from real connection. Imagine receiving a pile of plastic gadgets you don't want, knowing you now have the burden of keeping them to avoid hurting someone's feelings. By treating the day as normal, you are performing a quiet act of rebellion against the capitalist co-opting of human connection and authentic emotion. You likely prioritize experiences over things, finding that a quiet walk or a simple conversation holds more weight than a mountain of wrapped boxes. Number 10 considers the cultural aspect, realizing that the obsession with individual birthdays is a largely Western, individualist construct. In many collectivist cultures, focusing so heavily on the self is seen as disharmonious, and the group's well-being is placed above the individual. If you have a multicultural background, you might feel a disconnect between the Western demand for me time and a heritage that values the cohort. Imagine the traditional Vietnamese approach, where everyone turns a year older on the Lunar New Year, making aging a communal rather than solitary experience. Or consider the perspective of Jehovah's Witnesses, who avoid birthdays to maintain spiritual purity and separation from what they view as pagan roots. Even if you aren't religious, growing up in such an environment creates a neural pathway where normalcy is the standard and celebration feels foreign. Finally, we must reframe the concept of the normal day, not as a lack of celebration, but as a specific type of ritual known as the solo celebration. Psychology makes a clear distinction between loneliness, which is painful isolation, and solitude, which is a constructive and restorative state of aloneness. If you choose to spend your birthday alone, you are likely engaging in self-restoration, using the time to recharge rather than deplete your social battery. Imagine a day where you answer to no one, eat exactly what you want, and move at your own pace without managing anyone else's expectations or emotions. This private celebration validates your existence without requiring external witnesses, suggesting a high level of emotional self-sufficiency. So, if you are someone who treats their birthday like a normal day, it is time to stop viewing this behavior as a flaw that needs to be fixed. For some of you, it is a shield against the pain of depression or a necessary boundary to protect yourself from the reactivation of childhood trauma. For others, it is a philosophical stance, a rejection of the superficial in favor of the meaningful, and a commitment to authenticity over performance. And for many, it is a sign of profound independence, a declaration that you do not need the world to stop spinning to know that you matter. Ultimately, treating a birthday like a normal day is an assertion of agency, a way of taking back control over your own time and your own emotions. You are declaring that you alone define the significance of your life, independent of the turning of the calendar or the expectations of the crowd.